that. Hi, everyone. We're so glad that everyone can join and be here with us today for this serious conversation. We are the Deeper Dive Collective of the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, and we come together to explore the conditions around us, right? Like we were looking at all of the death and destruction that was happening to us and our lived experiences, our families and our friends. And so we became increasingly interested in exploring this motion towards fascism, what that is and what it looks like. And so this is something that we will be talking about today. And we hope that you would engage in this conversation with us. We know that out of it is going to be something that is truly transformative. We're here today for liberation, freedom from a system that will continue to enslave us for as long as we submit our collective power to it. Our goal is to facilitate a space where self-reflection meets action, where the intentionality of consciousness actualizes into a method. We want to get out of this a deeper understanding of this new moment in history and the rising motion towards fascism, and we must confront it and seize and hold our victory. So I'll pass it to Kim.
Thank you, Anthony. Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Still morning on the West Coast here. So I would like to thank everyone for joining us today. My name is Kimberly. I'm a revolutionary and member of the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, and I am your co-moderator today along with awesome Anthony. This event is sponsored by Learner. Who is Learner? We are an organization of revolutionaries from different backgrounds and experiences, working people dedicated to the important work of meeting and joining with each other. Revolutionaries engaged in fighting for the basic needs of the class and obtaining class power needed to transform the system. What do we do? Our form of direct action is analysis and education. We're dedicated to study and learning with and helping to evaluate, to elevate the consciousness of other revolutionaries in the workplace, in the classroom, in various organizations, in the street, in all areas of struggle. We work to politicize, raising the issues of private property and the need for class power. This event is one example of the work that we do. Our role as revolutionaries is to connect with the thinking of people and to help bring clarity and develop consciousness through their motion and inquiry to help lead revolutionaries from the perception of the problem to understanding the cause and the solution. The voice of the League is our paper, The Rally Comrades, which is accessible from our website at lrna.org. And we encourage you all to visit the Rally site to read, share, and subscribe. Before we begin, I would like to acknowledge our tech team for today. Rand, Aaron, and Peter, thank you. You're wonderful. And also a special shout out to the leaders of the Rev Ed Committee and the Deeper Dive participants for all your hard work and planning to bring this event together. I'll remind again that we are using the chat function to facilitate your questions, your comments, and to be placed in order to speak on Stack. And Aaron will be, timing us for about 3 minutes. The way our agenda will be working today, the program is about a total of 90 minutes unless it just gets real good to us, okay? There'll be 3 questions that we're doing this deeper dive in, each about 20 minutes each. We will be timing speakers at about 3 minutes. We will wrap up with a wonderful poet reading. And we also will have the availability for you all to comment give us some feedback for evaluation questions at the end. So I think that's it that I have so far, and I will turn that back over to Anthony.
Thank you, Kim. So I often I hold this belief in my heart that the movement is so much bigger than me. And in that, I just forget to talk about myself in any capacity. And so I guess I should just say, I received my PhD from Howard University in sociology. So I am a doctor in sociology and I teach at Howard University as a lecturer. And I'm so glad to be a part of the League of Revolutionaries for a New America, because outside of the academy, it feels like home. Right. It's a group of people that are designed or have created a structure where you can develop this more clearer, more transformative sense of self outside of the oppressive structures that are around us. So I appreciate the League and I appreciate being in this space, and I welcome you all again to it. So yeah, we'll jump right into giving context about this current moment, and then we'll jump straight into our questions. And so again, I want to just say to everyone, this is a safe space. I want everyone to feel like they can find themselves here in this space and in this movement and contribute something to the discussion. So I start by asking, what is happening to the world around us? Why is there so much death and destruction? The COVID-19 pandemic has reshaped our world by disrupting our former lives, our routines, practices, and in this, our entire way of thinking. Families and friends and colleagues and comrades are mourning the loss of their cherished loved ones from a global phenomenon. However, this wave of chaos that the coronavirus has ushered in is yet another intensification of already existing conditions that were threatening to not only human life, but to the entire planetary existence. There is a long history of exploitation, racial, gender, and other forms of oppression that has never ended. It is presently, as it has historically, been constricting us, denying us from liberty, freedom, and our basic right to life. Capitalism is siphoning life from humanity and the planet with its inexorable need for growth and expansion. It commodifies everything in sight. William Robinson writes, capitalism by its nature must constantly expand intensively by commodifying more and more of the world. What is there left to commodify? Where can the system now expand? End quote. Natural resources, food, water, and even the very air we breathe is not ours to harness, to use for subsistence, to live, but to purchase. And that's if we have the money to buy it. We live in a system where human beings have been reduced to objects. Under capitalism, people are things to be bought and sold on the market. So I ask you, how much are you worth? Ask yourself, how much is the value of your life? White supremacy helps to create the conditions of inequality and a system that was never designed for equality, for equity, for inclusion. And diversity is welcomed when and insofar as it does not interfere with the existing power dynamics and at the core, capitalism's productive process. Profit drives capitalism. Exploitation and oppression is its sustenance, and death and destruction lies in its wake. From machines to robotics to now automation and digitization, the tools of capitalist production are creating the conditions for the growing superfluity in working class labor. Well, what does this mean for humanity? Consider the social realities about the world we live in today: joblessness, homelessness, houselessness rather, poverty, famine, ecocide, and global warming, mass incarceration, police brutality, the criminalization of the working class, the poisoning of our waters and indigenous lands, the denial of asylum seekers like Haitian and other groups from natural disasters, political and social unrest, the killing of Black and brown bodies. The conditions of our material existence are worsening as the crisis of capitalism intensifies. We are here to take a deeper dive into capitalism's response to the growing devaluation of human life and the destruction of the planet, fascism.
Mm-hmm.
So the questions we ask are, why is the economic foundation of society moving the capitalist class as a whole, including both political parties, towards fascist rule today? How is the ruling class motion towards fascism implemented politically and ideologically, in mobilizing social base for fascism and in controlling movements that oppose capitalism and corporate private property? And lastly, how will we make real and lasting our vision for the future of humanity and the planet that we need for survival and well-being?
Mhm.
So with that, we can open it up to the first question. Can we put the first question in the chat? So I'll read it again. For this first question, we're looking at, we want to start with the economic foundation of society and how the economic foundation, right, our material reality, right, is moving the capitalist class as a whole, right, which includes both major political parties towards fascist rule today. And in this, we understand that exploitation and oppression has continuity under the capitalist system, right? So how, despite which political party is in office, do we continue to see fascism expressed today?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we can just jump in. I don't know if we have questions in the chat.
Well, I'll start by reading some of the comments. We have some great comments that are coming in. For capitalism, a tree is worth more when it's dead and cut down, and an apartment is worth more when it's an investment property and kept empty.
What are some examples that we see of fascism here today?
So I could just say, I'll be keeping stack. So if people want to speak, put yourself on stack in the chat, and I will call on you. Anyone can also comment, write questions or comments in the chat, and people will have 3 minutes to speak. So after 2 minutes are up, I'll give you a little ding to let you know to start wrapping up. So the stack is now open. I see Jesus has your hand up. And please unmute yourself when I call on you, and mute yourself when you're done speaking.
Good. Thank you, comrade. So that's a great question, Anthony. And for me, I see, we call it COVID racist apartheid in Chicago. It's the same all over the country. But that is one way where you see the privatization of education and the total disregard for Black and brown kids, poor kids, and the gutting of public health care, which to me is fascist. So we have like 60% of the population that's been vaccinated, but we have incredibly high rates in Black and brown communities. We've had 2 mothers die at a grade school because the infection rate was ridiculous. They had no contact tracing, no testing. That to me is fascism. And the union, okay, I don't want to over criticize the union, but let's just say they're not UTLA here, you know? So something needs to happen. And the thing that frustrates me as a mother is like, they're imperiling our kids. I call it genocide. You know, call it what it is. The behavior is criminal to the point that the governor is not going to remove mask mandates on the holidays and like great Christmas present. You know, it's unconscionable. So that to me is an example, and it's really demoralizing. It's a lot, but that to me is a key example that's globally bringing forth more revolutionaries that are having these kinds of discussions too. So that's like the glimmer of hope, right? People are coming together.
Thank you. Murphy, maybe? Aaron, I don't.
Yeah, thank you. We'll do Murphy, then Steve, then Taylor.
Okay, cool. Hi, Dr. Jackson. I know it's been a while. My procedure went well, by the way. But I think one of the main examples that we kind of see of fascism, and I kind of wrote my my article for you about it, was the kind of, I guess this whole idea of critical race theory and the denial of it, but also so to say how critical race theory has been shifted into teaching things that just like aren't completely true or no longer are a full story. So critical race theory is one thing, but I think one of the things that we're seeing is that there is a kind of, I guess, momentum that's starting to begin to happen where we are now labeling things that are not even critical race theory, but just the honest truth as critical race theory. It's more along the lines of critical race theory is now an umbrella for us not to teach about things such as slavery, or for us not to teach about things that have truly happened, the genocide of Black people as an example. And it's become this own umbrella. And I think that this is just another way in which that the elite, the ruling class elite, are trying to once again not only just shift education, but to control the narrative of education. So I think that's one of the main forms of fascism that I'm beginning to see.
Thank you for that. Absolutely. That was a great example.
Steve?
I agree certainly with the last speaker. Public education is mostly delivered locally. In fact, local government is in charge of providing most of the basic needs of society. If you think about it, even healthcare is organized on a county basis. Schools are pretty much city and county. And so what do we see going on these days? Well, you see Steve Bannon, who's a notorious fascist, calling for his stormtroopers to deconstruct the administrative state by attacking the cities. And 1/3 of all people who are voting officials fear for their lives. They've stated that. The California Association of School Boards and the National Association of School Boards has called on government to protect them from these guys. So we're watching an attack on the very institution of society that provides what people need to live and survive. Federal government, state government provide mostly money, a little bit from the state. But so we're seeing a real extra legal effort to batter the government and destroy it, to drown it in the bathtub, to make it non-functional. And that's what they want. This is a current part of the fascist offensive. And thank you guys, everybody, for hosting this wonderful opportunity to share.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. On staff, we have Taylor Dudley, Sarai Ariola Jacob, and Thomas Herschel. So Taylor, do you want to go ahead?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Jackson.
I will spotlight people if their cameras are on.
Great. Thank you, Peter.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, I just want to say, like, I think an example within like police brutality, but a lot of people may think that it's just like one-sided, but it's not. It's they may think that, you know, like it's only white officers killing Black people, but sometimes it's also Black officers killing minorities. But just the whole historic idea of what the police system or justice system has put in our minds, it causes division between minorities, certain minorities, you know, that we may feel like we're in different class statuses. So like if one Black person feel like, oh, I have more money than them, we start looking at each other, you know, we start dividing within each other. And that's pretty much the whole agenda. Instead of realizing that we're all the same, we start to divide ourselves, no matter what party we're on and no matter what party we're on. And that's the kind of goal that I think they want us to have.
All of it, right? It's all these.
Thank you. I just want to jump in for like 2 seconds and say, absolutely, like the methods by which capital uses in order to ensue division is very strategic, right? And sometimes they can come in the most subtlest forms because the history is already there that serves as trauma, right? And so the creating of this image that the attack of the things that you should fear the most comes from the people around you instead of from the systems and the structures that are organized to impede your upward growth and mobility is very strategic. So thank you for uplifting that, Taylor.
Thank you. Next on track, we have Sarai.
Hi, thank you guys for having me. So when I was thinking about fascism in the way that it's embraced by both sides of the political spectrum, I usually think of fascism as in terms of control, right? So I think about how we generally tend to think of the Democratic Party as being less controlling and more liberal than the right side. But I think that in actuality, they both just implement control on Black and brown bodies in different ways. So I think that, and obviously this is just, my own theory. I don't know a lot about sociology because I'm just a student. But when I think about the far right party, I think about their strategy of control is making sure that the resources do not trickle down. They ensure that the top stays at the top, and they ensure that there are no repercussions for being at the top so that there is no equal wealth distribution. And then I think about how the left side of the political spectrum actually implements similar types of control, but through the illusion of being liberal, in that they keep us in this welfare state, and they give us money for food, and they give us money for sustenance, the bare minimum. But what they will not do is they will not give us money to make our schools better. They will not give us money to make sure that we can build generational wealth and generational knowledge so that we can no longer just need nothing but sustenance. Because what I was talking to Dr. Jackson about a couple of days ago is that we were talking about fake generosity, and that the welfare state is nothing but fake generosity, and that what it is that it's giving us the bare minimum. But what you need to do to be truly generous is to make sure that we are no longer in a position where we need that kind of sustenance. We don't need to have our hand out to the government for government cheese. That is not freedom. That is not the way that people should live. So with this illusion of control, with this illusion of freedom and this illusion of liberalism, they're keeping us cyclically impoverished, and they're making sure that we can no longer become any more than that. But then when we start asking for more, it's like, oh, but I gave you food. Oh, but I gave you shelter. I know people in my family who know the welfare system better than they can know high school curriculum. And that is intentional. That is fully intentional. The reason that I have aunts and uncles that know more about gaming the system than they would know about changing the system itself is purely intentional, and they want to keep it that way. They want to make sure that we're well fed so that we can serve their purposes more. So that's why I generally think if fascism is about control, I think both sides of the political spectrum implement control just in different ways. And one way is more socially acceptable to Black and brown people because one of them is keeping us fed and the other one isn't.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
Very good.
Absolutely. Thank you. I was screaming the whole time. I can't even say nothing after that. You took the words out of my mouth.
Well, I wanted to just jump in, if I may, on that. Very good, Sarai. And, I had heard that, the Republican and Democratic Party are just, the right and left wing of the same bird. And you're absolutely right that there's a effort to exact control. There's been this control or attempt to control the working class by the Democratic Party by, you give a few crumbs and, but we only can give a few because we don't have no money. We can't spend no money. There's scarcity, and that whole narrative of their scarcity when we know that there's abundance. So very good. Go ahead, Aaron, with the rest of your stat.
Thank you. The next speaker is Thomas.
Okay, thanks everyone for the inspiring words. My concern is really trying to make people understand this phenomenon of what is fascism, where does it come from, how do we fight it? And I think for me, fascism is fundamentally a political system, and it grows out of economics. And if you look at the history of this country, you see when the Constitutional Convention came together, were property owners who wanted the government to protect their private property, including property in other people, which is the worst kind of, that's the worst violation, human rights violation, as well as people who wanted to have a government of the people, by the people, for the people. And these two sides compromised. So we would have a class system and also a popular system. And over time, this compromise has varied. But the key strategic part of the compromise is that enough workers, enough people at the lower classes, workers, farmers, were doing well. And this compromise has been shattered by the new industrial revolution that doesn't need labor. And so what you see happening, and you have white people now killing themselves, suicide rates over the last 20 years are spiking among the better off sets of workers. And this technology is eliminating the manual working class, and now it's going in to eliminate the middle class, the kind of authority managerial type jobs. I mean, you saw during the COVID epidemic, you saw high tech going into the educational system, which is the heart of the middle class, and allowing the conditions for fewer teachers, cheaper products in education, all these corporate things that would suck money out of the educational system. So this technological revolution is a progressive process, and this great compromise that was forged by the founding fathers can no longer work, and it's going to be replaced by some new kind of government, a new governmental control system. And we have to make sure it is of the people, by the people, for the people, and not just serving the interests of the corporations. This is a very important webinar or whatever I don't know what the hell you call this thing we're doing, but this is very important discussion we're having. And I'll go back on mute now.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you. On stack, I have Sharon Feldman and Lauren Donovan. Sharon?
This is Sharon Feldman. Hi, everybody. I was so excited about this webinar to talk with people about this subject. For me, as I watch the news and I think about things, I agree with the right and the Democrats and Republicans being two sides of the same coin. But the Republican movement, where the courts have been taken over, where the Supreme Court has been taken over, and the way the Congress is going and the Senate, so what I want to say is that, fascism, the sort of one of the ways of defining it is the government takes over industry. And what's happening because of the Supreme Court, the Congress, and, not getting all these things passed about voters' rights, and all the things that are happening sort of intertwined, is really a powerful move for me that is just terrifying. I mean, I watch the news at night and my guts are just, I can only take so much because I see the march moving forward. And I hope that in our discussion that we come up with some plans. But I also would like to be part of a large group who's fighting fascism so that I'm not going to be alone as it washes over us. That's all.
Thank you for saying that, and especially. Oh, I'm sorry. And especially in the way that you kind of wrap that up, because I do believe that this is something that we want to make sure that we have continued discussions about, right? That we have a collective of people that are working together to end fascism, to confront this, right? And what that looks like. So this is part of a continued discussion. So I'm glad you uplifted that, Kim.
Yes, we are going to move to the next question. People have their hands raised. It's stay in stack. Much of this is very interrelated. People have already kind of commented on the next question that I will read right now. How is ruling class motion towards fascism implemented? Politically, ideologically, in mobilizing the social base for fascism, and in controlling movements that oppose capitalism and corporate private property. So we'll continue with
Yeah.
Stack.
So yeah, there were some people who had their hand raised. I guess if you had your hand raised and you don't want to speak to this question, you can lower it. But otherwise, I have the next four on Stack are Lauren Donovan, Amari Stewart, Steve Payon, and Ethel Long Scott. So let's start with Lauren.
Hi, sorry, I'm outside right now. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So I just wanted to ask if you think the class consciousness will ever lead to a revolution. Obviously, there will always be people who, like, I kind of consider slaves to capitalism, who are kind of born into the system, who just think that that's the way that this is supposed to function. They're supposed to be in poverty, that it's something that they did, something that was a result of like their misfortune or something that their parents did. And then like also on the other hand, people who are in the upper class who feel very entitled to their status and very entitled to, you know, the job that they have or whatever materialistic objects that they have, that I feel like also go hand in hand with the association of, I guess, quote unquote, good and bad things. And I guess to kind of, I know in the book White Fragility, the author kind of touched on this, when you're kind of conditioned to think that like Black neighborhoods are inherently bad and white neighborhoods are always good and sunny and rainbows and all that stuff, you start to associate Black people with danger and crime and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, while you associate white people with wealth and good jobs and just like, I guess, an overall like undertone of like well-being. So do you think that we'll ever as a society get over this? Do you think that this will take, I guess, too much time? I don't exactly know how to ask it, but do you think the class consciousness as a whole will ever come, or do you think that we're too far deep into capitalism? Do you think we're too conditioned to capitalism to ever get over that mindset?
I can jump in, or I can let Jerome jump in because it looks like he wants to say something. I don't know if Jerome always has very empowering words in talking about this. And I think that this still is in the breadth of this question because we're talking about political and ideologically, like what are the tactics? And it seems like you're speaking to the tactics. So I don't know, Jerome, if you wanted to jump in.
Sure, I can speak to that. First of all, this whole question of class consciousness, I think that's one of the most important questions that we can deal with in this discussion of fascism, because as many of you know, class is the last thing that people think about when they think about the revolutionary process or a revolution happening. And I don't think we can have a revolution without raising a certain level of class consciousness of those workers who can be united of the working class. It's critical that we do that. So, and the way to do that, I think, is really important too, because not only do we have to be involved in the day-to-day struggles of the working class, we also have to be there to educate each other. You know, we have to learn the whole question of what class consciousness is. How does we evolve as a class, and how that class can be effective if we can unite, you know, and so now the real question that she's asking is it possible under capitalism to raise class consciousness, or does the ideology of capitalism have us so tightly gripped that we can't think our way out of it?
Mm-hmm.
There is no question in my mind that the working class can get out of this and think its way out of it. Matter of fact, you know, if you think about it, the revolutionary process is at least 60% intellectual. That means that we have to study capitalism and understand that capitalism, you know, as an oppressive and exploitive system is not just going to run its course. We have to kill it. You know, we have to organize in a way that we can prevent capitalism from continuing. And of course, I think it's possible, or I wouldn't be involved in this process for the last 50 years. But that moment is getting closer, you know, because this economic situation that we're dealing with is driving more and more people toward the equality of poverty. You know, and you know, when you think about it, the poverty of poverty, that sets the basis for a lot of consciousness raising if we do our jobs and educate people. I just want to say one last thing about fascism. Many people think that fascism is different from capitalism. Fascism is not at all different from capitalism. Fascism is a political organization of how they rule under capitalism. You know, like we're on the bourgeois democracy now. You know, we can discuss and struggle over our voting rights and police brutality and all that. Under fascism, they take all that away. You know, there's no law that you have a right to vote. You know, that's not a constitutional right. And so therefore, if we're thinking about the difference between today and fascism, think about the fact that we can no longer have sessions like these, you know, without critical interruptions. We can no longer demand that we have a right to vote because it's not allowed under fascism. So we got a lot to deal with, but I'm confident that as a working class, we will get there. And revolution is on the agenda. Fast.
Told you.
Thank you for the great question, Taylor, and thank you for the answer, Jerome. Sorry, Anthony and Kim, did you want to speak more to that?
No, yeah, I completely agree. There's not much more the stuff to say, but I just will uplift, kind of just like echoing the sentiment of what people have already said, Murphy, Sarah, Lauren, in that these things are being taken away from us. Like, look at what's happening to voting rights, right? Look at what's going on in Texas. Look what's going on with critical race theory. Like, and like Murphy said, anything that it might be under the umbrella that challenges capitalism is going to be, you know, given to critical race theory, because it's already developing this bad name, like Marxism, like historical materialism, right? It's all grouped in this thing that this is something that we shouldn't talk about. This is something that we shouldn't use. And right, so we're seeing these examples of these things that are being taken away from us. And so this motion again towards fascism is intensifying. So yeah, I'll pass it to whoever's next.
Yes, just one quick comment. It seems a little ironic that we're going through this as a kind of a sign of hope, because the fact that the ruling class has to be fascist in order to stay in power is an indication of, you know, not only the growing consciousness, but the path to revolution, which means change. So there's hope in that. There's hope in the eye of the storm, right? That this too shall pass. Go ahead, Destat.
Thank you. I'm sorry, that was Lauren's question. So next I have Imari. There are lots of people on stack. If you've already spoken, I'm moving you towards the end of stack so that we could give everyone a chance to speak. So Imari Stewart, go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, you can?
Ish.
Ish. Give me 1 second and I'll fix this problem right now. Can you guys hear me now? Am I yelling?
Yeah, you're louder.
You're louder.
Okay, is this better or am I still yelling?
It's yelling. It's very loud. I'm happy to hear your voice though. I will say that.
I'm sorry, I really don't know how to change this. I guess it's my computer. I don't know, but
you can just ask your, comment question. It's fine.
Okay. Oh, wait. Oh, I was just going to answer the second question kind of in my own way. I think how fascism is implemented politically and ideologically is how we learn everything in our lives through education in like the school systems and through mass media, through the propaganda that they constantly give out to us, and completely how we see the world of those around us that we've never met. And I like to think, or I've been taught kind of to see education, especially in the public school sector, as kind of like an 18-year-long indoctrination program where I'm taught how to think, not exactly math and science, but how I'm supposed to be conformed, how I'm supposed to be a worker bee in a system that's bigger than me. I'm not supposed to have my own thoughts, because having my own thoughts is powerful. And people who are currently are empowered, they work off of ignorance. Ignorance is their strongest tool when it comes to controlling a group of people, and also implementing a lot of fear. And I think the people that are in control right now, they implement fear through making us feel like we need money, and constantly putting this idea, if you don't have this certain lifestyle, if you're not portraying this sort of image, that's your biggest issue. It's not us being in control. It's not us controlling the way you think or how you see the world around you. It's how we're going to keep on making sure you are kind of seeing the world in this two-dimensional, materialistic way, and not actually seeing it for the bigger picture, that you as a person, for a large part of us, or many of us for a long time, have no control over how we see the world around us. We kind of see ourselves in a double consciousness, as W.E.B. Du Bois said in his book, I think it's The Souls of Black Folks. Yes, he said it's a double consciousness. We see ourselves in the light of white people, because currently they're the ones who are upholding this fascist system in the world around us. So I am not thinking of, let me break this down, I'm not having the mindset of a revolutionary. I'm having the mindset of somebody who's already been conformed to a system, and who's too scared to break away from it, because everybody around me have also in a lot of ways conformed. And as we all know, change is very scary. We as human beings automatically, just as a self-preservation tactic, we fight change. So I think that's how they're constantly going to move forward, and how they constantly are wiping out this base of people who are kind of making this coalition against them, is they're using our fear of change, our fear of not understanding the world around us, a fear of the fact that this entire time, we've had no control in a lot of ways of how we lived our lives and how we seen the people around us. They're using that fear, and they turn us against the people who are actually trying to save us from a system that's been exploiting and oppressing us for centuries. So that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Amari. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And now I'd like to introduce one of our performers for later, a musician and cultural worker who we will be hearing the music of at the end of this meeting. Steve, did you still want to be on staff? Steve Pion.
Hey, sorry, I'm at work. How you doing? Hey, so back to the question of like fascism. Am I supposed to be doing the music part right now, or answering the question because I was on Stack Next?
Yeah, we'll play that at the end. So why don't you go ahead?
Okay, cool. Yeah. No, I think us as like as humanity, like I'm not even sure if we got enough time to fight back capitalism, like with all the natural resources like falling apart, and climate change and so on and so forth. Like, to fight the system, it's going to have something of equal power or very close to it to topple it. It's like we need to think like kind of like outside the box systemically, because everything is like pretty much, if you look at everything as like an energy flow, no matter what we do, we're controlled, like our contributions as society, whether we're leftist or what have you, like when we buy into the system or when we pay taxes or when we even vote, we're somewhat co-signing to the to how things are systemically. Like if you look all over the world, no matter what we do, people are going to hate it.
Eyeballs. I really lost my glasses. I don't know where they are. They could be in here somewhere.
Oh, mute.
Sorry, I'll help with that.
Oh, no worries. But like us, like we don't need us as the United States, or us people that are bonded by like capitalism, like we don't even know that we don't know things. So it's like we blindly contribute towards fascism, towards war, towards poverty. So like my biggest question would be like, how do we plan and organize to get that? Because it's hard enough to get the 12% of organized labor organized, because it always gets the power gets taken over by the Democratic Party. And then within the Democratic Party, they're controlling the narrative of what we vote for. So it's like, you're damned if you do and damned if you don't. So like, and then it's always thrown like, hey, we need to have a third party, or or we need to do this. There's never like no answers of how we're going to do this as a tiered program. Like they say, revolution's not an event, it is a process. Revolution is also not an election. So it's like, how do we plan 4 years from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and try to get unite all the people that have the same wants and needs and goals to have an alignment so we can see the trajectory of where we're headed. Because the trajectory of where we're headed is nothing but war. And that's my time, but that's just some food for thought. Thanks for having me.
So, Kim, did you want to jump in first?
Sure. Well, I just wanted to point out that those were very important questions. You know, basically, you know, from what I got from Steve, what's the plan? What's the strategy? And how's the strategy going to inform our tactics, right? Actually, before we, you know, continue on Stack, maybe we can have, you know, some of our veterans respond to that. I think Ethel, you had your hand raised. If you're available, why don't you take a stab at that one?
Ethel is actually next on Stack, so that's perfect.
Okay.
Kind of going to talk about something a little different. First of all, great job, team, bringing this together. Excellent discussion. It's really inspiring. I think that at the heart of the things that the leaders have been raising here is that there is a desperate need for us to build a common unity towards a common vision. And one of the things that's very much in our favor that other speakers have addressed is this question that, you know, the economic revolution is speeding ahead. It has actually caused the situation that we politically and we see people socially responding to. But of course, as people have raised, people's consciousness is all over the place about why does it exist? What can we do? How do we advance forward? And I think within that regard, that's the importance of these discussions and the importance of the efforts that are going on now about which way forward. This question of the trying to really nail down, we're looking at also both an economic fascism, which we actually kind of haven't quite said, but let's talk about that because we're talking about the merger of the corporations and the state. That's already well underway in America, and it's different than what happened in Europe, and it's distinctive. But so now we are having a capitalism that is disaster capitalism that really it doesn't need all these people in the paid workforce. And if you don't need people in the paid workforce, my goodness, what do you need them voting, telling corporations and their shareholders what to do? That's no longer needed. And this is the reason behind this, you know, this fierce effort to stop the right to vote and shut down every avenue of democracy, or even the pretense of democracy, as people have noted. I think that each of these things, though, are doorways to how people are beginning to awaken and beginning to understand that if we want a different future, we are going to have to construct and fight for that. There is no reason for these death dirges that, you know, that we have to have scarcity, that we can't take care of, we have to live in fear of one another. Those are all fascist, part of this fascist culture that they have carefully been seeding and developing. And we have to elevate, and our class has. Look at it, 26 million people hit the streets and demonstrated in the middle of a pandemic and translated that into 168 million people at the voting booths. And what is the ruling class response was, gosh darn it, a coup effort, right? And that coup has not stopped. I heard the real. So I think that what we have to do is make ourselves aware of the multiple ways that we're under assault and use each of those to build and recruit leaders out of these different struggles, be they on the floors of Congress, in the Cori Bushes and the AOCs, et cetera, or in our neighborhoods. That's what time it is in terms of building, how do we begin to structure a new cooperative society?
Very good, very good. Thank you, Ethel.
Thank you, Ethel, that's great. And the bell, as you were mentioning, it's 2 minutes, and so we're asking people to speak for no more than 3. So everyone has a chance to wrap up after they hear the bell. We do have a lot of people on Stack, and I know we want to move on to the 3rd question soon. So thank you all for your patience. The next speaker is Lily, who mentioned in the chat that they were in Berlin, and definitely be interesting to hear your perspective.
Hi, everybody. Yeah, I'm in Berlin, and I mainly just wanted to echo the sentiments of what I put in the chat, specifically with respect to understanding fascism from this kind of historical perspective, namely that fascism, I study sociology here. I should maybe back up. And I focus a lot on the rise of fascism and fascist regimes, namely in Berlin. And I think it's really important to understand that fascism is inherently a political ideology that is very difficult to pin down, and that it was diametrically opposed to communism. And there was its bitter kind of nemesis in the rise of Nazism. And in that respect, I think that there are some important things to know about the kind of diametrical opposition between the two, namely that communism and socialism rely on a faith in the masses in terms of a rationalism that is historical materialism, while fascism relies on a very anti-rational, almost pseudo-religious kind of grasp at the disgruntlement of the masses and then redirecting that towards oftentimes racial strife. And it's important also to note that Nazis, and Hitler in particular, expresses admiration for chattel slavery and colonialism. So I just think it's important that we understand the relationship between fascism and socialism historically, because I think it's still highly relevant today. And that oftentimes people who become drawn in by fascism are also people that are experiencing the oppression of the class system. So I just think that it's important that we keep all this in mind and that we understand fascism operates on an emotional level and not a rational level. And that's how it draws people in. And oftentimes those people are feeling the same disgruntlement actually, but they are channeling it in the wrong way.
Very good. Excellent. Before we go to the next question, there is an important question that came up in the chat. And I'd like to offer this to some of our formal educators that's with us today. You know, I'll call on you if you guys aren't just racing the answer, but do you think that the education system plays a part in aiding in fascism and capitalism? If so, how can we transform the education system to combat and try to end fascism and capitalism? We got Steve Miller, Kim King, Walda.
Rosemary's on back.
Yeah, okay.
If you want to take a crack at that, Rosemary?
That's good too.
Oh, you wanted me to take a stab at that one? I was looking more at the whole global aspect of fascism
Okay,
right
well,
now.
Okay, I'll keep you on stack.
But I can certainly do, yeah, the education, but we have some other educators on too. So let one of them go.
All right.
I can say something quick if you want, Kim.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. I mean, just very quickly. I mean, I think we know that educational institutions from pre-K to grad school are designed to reproduce the system that we are living in. So the question is, how do we do education outside of the formal educational institutions, and how do those of us who are revolutionaries and teachers, how do we connect up and try within the institution to push the struggle? So it's, you know, we're an inside out, but we're also outside of, and this today is a perfect example of students from Howard, you know, and other places participating in a broad conversation about overturning fascism and the capitalist system it, you know, protects, and, you know, moving toward, you know, the world that we all need and want. So it's a both and, but it's part of the class struggle. It is part of the struggle to end all of the oppressions and exploitations. And we just need to recognize it's like trade unions, right? What are the limitations? But still struggle within and make the connections to revolutionary organizations that cut across our spaces.
Great. Thank you so much, Walden. We have one more brief comment from one of our other educators, Supreme, Ms. Kim. You're muted, Mama.
Okay, there we go. Hi, everybody. I'm an instructor at a community college in Oakland, California, and I've also taught at Cal State. And so fascism is being imposed in many ways, really through all the institutions of our society. One thing I noticed in the community college, for example, and in the higher ed, is they're basically withdrawing a lot of our rights and the things that we need, and then justifying it and making it seem like it's perfectly normal. So for example, the community college used to be set up for lifelong learning. You could take a class, you could take dance classes over and over again, et cetera. You could take classes. It was for students who maybe weren't quite ready to go to the four-year school. Now they have a limit on the number of times you can take classes. You can't take classes more than 2 or 3 times. If you don't pass your English or math class, then you have to go to a whole nother district to take that same class. So these opportunities that they used to have for students are being taken away. As you may know, the Pell Grant, you can only use financial aid. You only have, I think, 4 or 5 years to use it. Maybe it's 6 years total. If you're in school for longer than 6 years, you no longer have access to the Pell Grant. And that's a new thing I think was passed under Obama. So I think one of the most important things we can do to fight fascism in schools is to fight for the basic needs and rights of students and faculty and staff. We should not allow them to say that students can only take a class 3 times or else they have to go to another district. We should not allow that they're going to take financial aid away when we know that so many of our students have to work full-time or at least part-time. And a lot of our students don't know that this is a new thing. When I was in school, when most of us who are over the age of 45 were in school, these were not in place. So these are new efforts as a part of the new society to control and undereducate and push out the working class who they no longer need. One more thing is just the huge growth of part-time faculty. So now in society, nationally, 70% of professors are part-time, 70%. The whole, Anthony knows, many of us who are lucky enough to get a tenure position first had to suffer through the job of being an adjunct professor. And there's no less qualification that Anthony has than I have. I got lucky, I got in at a certain time. So there's only a certain number of those positions that are available. And that is a way for them to cut our academic freedom. Because every semester you don't know if you're going to have a job or not if you don't have tenure. Once you have tenure, you have academic freedom. They can't fire you because of your political views. They're not supposed to fire anyone for their political views, but if you're not sure if you're going to have a job or not, you may change what you would teach in your classes. So that's another way they're implementing fascism.
Very good, very good.
And can I just add one thing? And it kind of speaks to Mustafa's question and just this whole question about education and institutions, because I think Walda brought it to institutions like on a much larger scale, in that I oftentimes reflect on what Audre Lorde reminded us, and that for the master's tools will never dismantle the master's house. They may allow us to temporarily beat him at his own game, but they will never enable us to bring about genuine change. So to the question about education, right, it seems like more working class folk, right, that, you know, may be critical of institutions to the extent that they challenge them, but not want to transform them, can get behind the denial of access to education, right? And the cutting back of resources, right? But when it comes to the actual pedagogy itself, right? And what does it mean to be a revolutionary? What does it mean to develop a liberatory consciousness? And implementing, or being intentional about implementing this liberatory, emancipatory perspective in the institution is what begins to divide us, and it's harder to do, right? So I think it's important, like Walter said, to think outside of the institution, and we have to begin to do that. That is the purpose of these collectives. If we continue to force our way into the system, to use the system as a means of invoking transformative change, it looks like the attack on critical race theory, right? And however that goes is however that goes, but nonetheless, we have to be intentional that as we engage in these, because Jerome talked about it, as we engage in these reformative struggles, right? Like, being able to fight to teach critical race theory in the schools, we have to know that that is not the end game. That might be a means by which we use to really invoke change, but real change is going to come from outside of the system. And that is the purpose of these revolutionary collectives. Kim?
Very good. Okay. So everybody that's still on stack, keep your hands up, keep your hands up. We are going to go to the third question. So Anthony, did you want to read the third question, or I can?
Yeah, so just how will we make real and lasting our vision for the future of humanity and the planet that we need for survival and well-being? How can we make this real? How can we make it last? How can we make our strategies and tactics towards fighting for true transformation and liberation real? Right? Instead of this abstract, theoretical, something that we can talk about and pontificate about, what can we actually do to help this materialize?
Okay. So Aaron, go ahead.
Aaron, the stack.
Move through the stack.
Well, while we wait for Aaron, I wanted to address one more thing, right? And it speaks to this question. So I'm going to jump right into this question, and then we can continue to open it up. But, we have to address this question of scarcity, right? We talk about education, we talk about indoctrination, we talk about all these things that capital does, right? And the different strategies that, the Democrats and the Republicans, the right and the left use. But we have to remember that we have an abundance in society. Systems and structures and the dominant narrative is designed to make you believe that we have a scarcity of natural resources, but we do not. There is an attack, right, on our bodies and on the land. However, we have an abundance, and we have the tools that we need to lead us to the transformative movement that we're working towards, right? The type of society that we would hope to have is actualizable because we see it. It's the way that we use the forces to produce the necessities of life. So this whole idea around we don't have power either is something that we have to challenge, right? And Kim, you spoke to this, the necessity of understanding that there is hope, right? There is hope in the type of society that ends exploitation and oppression. And we have to continue to hope towards it. But what can we do practically, right? Because I always teach my students about, we talk about these abstract and theoretical things, but you have to make them practical, right? What can we do in the real world to move towards our vision for the future, right? So what is our vision for the future? First of all, what is our vision for the future? How can we move towards a collective vision for the future? And what strategies and tactics, again, can we use to move us towards that?
Very good. Thank you, Anthony. So Aaron, go ahead and move through staff.
Yeah. Sorry, I was muted earlier. That was my bad. So next up on stack, rolling over from the last question, we have Autumn, and then Mac, and then Ramses. So Autumn, do you want to go ahead?
Is this for the second question or the third question?
Third.
right, cool. Sorry. So I think the actionable way to actually make this change is you're going to have to start on a local level, because people are too disenfranchised when it comes to national level things, sometimes state level things, and they don't see the change. So what you need to do is you need to work locally within like the individual communities within your city, your municipality, and stuff like that, where you can see these more tangible changes, these more tangible differences. Like I want to say it was Minneapolis, but it's various cities all over the country that have started considering like reducing how much we pay the police, how like police funding, trying to shift stuff like that. And it's stuff like that that empowers people and makes them feel like they're actually making a difference, because the core issue right now is less that people can't tell what's wrong, or that people won't necessarily listen that this is what's going wrong, and it's that people don't care and they don't have the time or energy to care. That's definitely intentional. It's definitely intentional that you spend all your time being a wage slave or your capitalism. By the time that you get home, you don't have the time or the energy to go out and protest, to like dedicate yourself to this as you would need to take down the system. So working locally with people can make people realize that, oh, you can actually do that. Oh, this does matter. Oh, this can improve my living conditions. So if you want to start tangibly, we start working locally. We start informing people about the issues. We start getting people to vote. We start getting people to work on these things, et cetera, et cetera.
Thank you.
Thank you. I also want to, so next up we have Mac, and I know in the audience we have a few researchers who have studied fascism, and so I want to invite William Robinson and Steve Jobbett to put themselves on stack if they have comments to make. But next up we have Mac and then Rita.
Actually, I took my hand down at the last minute because I think this is a question I came to hear answers to. What I do, I think at this point, we share common vision. We see that when that many people hit the streets. I think, right, we talk about the fact that like our analysis and understanding of solution is different. And so, and I really appreciated somebody bringing up that fascism and fascists are oftentimes misguided and reactionary working people who are being indoctrinated into like being used to transfer us into the new system after capitalism. But like the how it, because that's what I think for me is it has been like my biggest thing is like the programmatic and pragmatic things, right? Like I think like this question is a very big question. And that it actually breaks down into actual steps and plans to win for people who are wanting to understand what's happening. I think that though, especially just for the last year and a half, the way that they've watched nobody care about them in their life is a whole nother kind of level of things that like really just expedited. I mean, I'm sorry, expedited. Well, yeah, but sped up and accelerated this timeline of like this social upheaval that we're like, no, is on its way because the changes in the economic system. Like we see the reaction. And so it's like, it's grounding to know that we're sharing it with everybody, but it's like, yeah, but what are the programmatic and pragmatic changes? So yeah, sorry, I'm going to stop because that is what I'm here to talk about. It's what I want to learn about. It's such a fundamental now. It's like now it's where we're at.
Very good.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next on stack, we have Rita.
Thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate the comments that Mac and Autumn just made, because I think it's really, really important. I do think that if we look at a revolutionary process, that's what we're in, is an overall process, right? That began with the changes in the economic base, like we saw. I mean, we know what the Rust Belt is. We know deindustrialization. We know that we're moving toward a digital and electronic technology. Another part of this process is the social motion. And we saw that social motion both from a small but empowered social base of fascism that Trump helped to organize and solidified on the one hand, and then on the other hand, a social force for change that I think Ethel mentioned that we see in terms of the movement for Black Lives, that we see in the grassroots organizing that's going on, that we see in every single fight that's related to protecting what used to be, or what often felt like guaranteed rights, from voting rights to the right to healthcare to various things like that. I'm a registered nurse. So I see, within these institutions, how these processes, these steps, these pieces toward fascism begin to build and build. And one of the key things, I think, is this question of how do we dismantle white supremacy within these institutions? And that's not apart from dismantling capitalism. And I think that's an important link to make, that the development of fascism in this country is integral to the relationship between white supremacy and private property. And that's one of the things that also, the ruling class has used to keep us divided. So our most immediate task, I think, is to unite this class, to unite a working class in its own interest. And I think Autumn spoke about that in terms of on the ground, whether it's closing the Irwin County Detention Center or defunding the police or defending trade union rights, which is another aspect of the class that's being strongly attacked. Is to begin to build in a very practical way the relationships of these social movements to each other as a class empowered for itself in a very practical way. And the last thing I wanted to say, and Erin, I don't know, did you ring the bell? I'm sorry, I didn't know, is a vision about what's actually possible is actually now not only possible, but necessary. Because the other aspect of this crisis is the existential element of climate crisis, which impacts all of us, right? So unless we're able to change the existing power relationships, we're all placed at risk. So I just wanted to share that, you can't really hold a vision of something unless you know that there's a possibility to achieve that. And I think that's important. We can achieve it, because if anything is constant, is change. Thanks, I'll pass.
Thank you so much, Rita. That's wonderful. I do want to we're going to continue with Stack. I did want to mention that we do have some evaluation questions. If the tech team can go ahead and put them in the chat, but I will read them, briefly. So, because we value your feedback and we want to continue to improve on this process and make these events better. One, what was your biggest takeaway from this conversation? 2, how do you rate your experience, 1 being awful and 10 the best ever? And 3, would you like to help organize future conversations? So those questions will go in chat and then we'll continue with our staff.
Thank you. So let me just read out some names I have on stack. Sorry, Ivani Ransois, did you still want to be on staff?
I'm sorry, did you call my name?
Yeah, were you still on staff?
Oh yes, I had a question, but this was about the fascism.
Yeah, go ahead.
To go back to what Professor Jackson was talking about with like what's going on in Texas and stuff, and like Haiti in general. Like I would want to know, like, how is it different when we encounter like fascism, when it's not like more so a black and white thing, but like within our own community? Because like me, I'm Haitian, right? So when I hear like what's going on with Haiti, like not Texas, but like Haiti, like in general, like how the bourgeoisie, like they have power over like the other. I feel like it kind of makes me sad, but then again, like I'm like just becoming more aware, like how can we like resolve that when it's within Haitian people? Like it's the ones who have money are like either they're like just being greedy and they like don't really want to help the ones in need and stuff like that. And then I would say like police officers and stuff, they like abuse their power when there are people like who are in need for the assistance. Like I was watching a video where a police officer, it was like a chief in Haiti, right? He was like holding like a rifle and he was like talking to this little boy, telling him to like play with the gun, things like that. And I kind of found that like messed up and stuff because it was a little boy, like no younger than 4 years old, who was like being influenced, who was being exposed to that type of environment. I feel like how is it different? Like how can we resolve that when it's amongst people our own skin color?
Yeah, I think this is great. Like, when the social base of fascism is internalizing, right, this exploitation and oppression, when we then, act against our own people, how do we break that down? I think that this is definitely a question to tactics, because this has to include, when we talk about making real this lasting vision for our future and working towards something that is transformative. One thing that our tactics, among the many things that it has to include, is confronting or addressing the trauma that's in our own communities, right? Confronting this bourgeois ideology, or this bourgeois understanding of the world, right? That does not lead to a transformative movement. And it starts with self-reflection. And, this just brings me to Paulo Freire when he says, as long as the oppressed remain unaware of the cause of their condition, right, they fatalistically accept their exploitation. So this is another example of that. We can fatalistically accept our own exploitation if we are unaware of the cause of our condition, and we have to identify what is the cause of our condition. And the first question spoke to that, right? These oppressive and exploitative and alienating conditions that there is in this capitalist system is the cause of our condition. And it's something that people have to come to that on their own. And I think that that is the role of revolutionaries. Again, that is what this space is designed to do. We are, as Kim said in her opening, an organization that is designed to uplift consciousness, a collective consciousness, to move towards a revolutionary ideology that is going to end exploitation and oppression, right? And so, yeah, I'm gonna shut up and let somebody else jump in. But yeah, thank you for uplifting that.
Thank you. So again, if people have already spoken, it's not very likely that you'll get a chance to speak again. I want to prioritize the voices we haven't yet heard. So next on stack, we have Brooke Springfield and then Steve Jobbitt.
Hello. So I was actually had raised my hand when I was thinking about how the parties implement fascism, and was directly thought about the article I had read lately in regards to the abortion laws in Texas and those strengthening, and how the parties had basically implemented their rule over women's rights and bodies, and how it disproportionately affected Black and Brown women, specifically because they weren't able to have, well, they were less likely to have the resources to go to a different state, or to be able to take the time off in order to go to a different state to have that service received. Again, this law is prohibiting abortions, though, within the time period where most women don't even think they're pregnant. So again, the Texas Supreme Court majority white male is implementing laws that are limiting the rights of women's bodies, specifically Black and brown, again, imposing their will over them forcibly through the law. So that, again, plays into fascism. So I was highlighting that because that was a specific example I had thought of in recent events.
Thank you so much for adding that. This
Thank
is something
you.
we have to continuously confront. So thank you.
Steve Jobbitt.
Yeah, hi. I'm speaking to you. I used to live in California and teach there, and that's where I met Rosemary Lee and Kimberly King and so many of our comrades down there. And it's been a long time since I've moved back to Canada. I guess it was 2013. So I've certainly missed these conversations because of the radical and revolutionary energy that you all have. And it's just so wonderful to be part of this again. Yeah, I miss you too, Kimberly. And we actually, Kimberly and I had these conversations all the way back to even prior to, I believe, Occupy LA, when it became really poignant to ask this question, is this fascism? And what struck me as a researcher, because I've been looking at this question since about 2010, is that from an academic point of view, again, and as Lily was really quite clear about this, it's very hard to define fascism as a movement. So as a historian, I like to think about fascist moments in world history. And if you would look for parallels with the past, we're very similar to that moment, not even so much in the 1920s and 30s. What frightens me is that we're about the 1890s, the turn of the century, where you have this radical revolutionary energy that's building and spilling over into all these different kinds of movements, of which Occupy LA and what we're talking about now is that, but so too is so the white supremacy that's I'm not saying we're the same, not at all, but that radical energy that's spilling out into the streets and these movements, people asking questions and organizing against capitalism, against a monopoly capitalism that we're seeing now on a global scale is very similar to the late 19th century free trade liberalism that we see as a part of this neoliberal imperialism of the post 1989 period with the fall of communism and so forth, where it's become global and hegemonic, right? So it's all over the place and hard to escape. And I just wanted, in terms of fighting it and organizing against it, again, I'd stress something that Lily said, which I really appreciated, is that the people that we're struggling against, or this movement that we're struggling against, is doing a very good job of siphoning off that radical revolutionary energy into right-wing positions. And it's very easy for them because they have the nation, they have nationalism, they have racism, they have white supremacy, and they have the power to do that, and they have the money and resources. So that's who we're up against, I think. And the late 19th, early 20th century tells us, it gives us that kind of parallel. And right now, and people mentioned this, so COVID and the climate crisis has generated a consciousness. And I think we're in a race against the radical right to organize, not capitalize on it, but to make something of that, and to help and to organize around that. My own studies right now are on Eastern Europe, in particular Hungary, and we should be very concerned that the radical right there and the fascistic right is able to they've been the ones who've been able to mobilize around questions of COVID and the climate crisis. So I think time is of the essence. I don't have any magic bullet here as to how we organize. And of course, you're in the United States, and I think organizing nationally and of course organizing locally and under local conditions is really, really important. To go back to something that Anthony said, and back to Paulo Freire, right? Like, we're all really good agents of our own oppression, and we have to first see that and then think our ways out of it. And one of the ways to do it is through raising consciousness, studying, as Kimberly's mentioned multiple times in the chat function, and then just rethinking the way we see ourselves, the world, and our place in it, which means learning to speak a different language, right? Unpacking the language of our oppressors and speak and really thinking through and speaking of the world in entirely different ways is very, very difficult for all the reasons that so many of you have mentioned today.
Thank you.
So just one question for Aaron. What's our stack looking like?
We have a lot of people on stack. I think we were going to go to a poet soon. Is that right?
Yes.
So around how many more speakers do we have time for? We have more speakers than we have time for. So
Okay. Well, go ahead and maybe take 2 more, and then I will introduce our poet. How about that? Make it 2 minutes
All
each.
right.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah. Shorten the.
I'll try to make it so that we hear from different voices. So I want to hear from Rosemary and then Tony Ryan.
Hi,
So
I'm glad
Rosemary.
that, am I unmuted? Yeah, I'm glad that Steve brought up some of the global aspects. He and Kimberly and I were at, in a freedom school for a year at Occupy LA, which was amazing experience. We took it out to anybody and everybody. But again, the whole global aspect, because we're seeing this transnational capitalism, there's just running out of anything left to exploit. So we see this displacement of millions of people worldwide. We see, now it's all finance. There's not enough people working. And then what do we do with a surplus population? I mean, the poorest countries in the world, less than 1% have been vaccinated. And there's a global working class of displaced people. And that includes people displaced by the climate crises and by violence. And the way it's playing out here with this when we see this fascism also developing in Brazil and Hungary, like Steve said, and the Philippines as a response. And here in the States, it's like preemptive. It's like, oh my God, these people are going to start organizing. This great strike of 2021, 8 million workers who are not union have refused to go back to work under the conditions. That's a strike. They're withholding their labor. And so it's a global working class and a global movement. And with the climate aspect, that is certainly global. So it has to be local, but we have to be aware of the global aspect as well, because that's what we're up against. Transnational capitalism is in a crisis. And we are going to fight back, and it's moving. We're up against the state. If we're fighting for the basic necessities of life, be it housing, be it education, be it food, we confront the state on it at this point. And we can see solutions. In LA Unified School District, we fed millions of meals over the whole COVID last year. We provided meals not just to students. It can be done. We can see that these things can be done. The resources are there. And it's how we work together and keep organizing. And hopefully many of you will want to think about what we're going to do in our next follow-up session to this, because this is an ongoing conversation. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you. Lastly, we have Tony Ryan.
Hello. First off, this is a great conversation. I'm really sorry I missed quite a bit of it. I had a little bit of chaos here trying to find my phone this morning. Anyway, I definitely would like to continue to participate. It's really good to hear some friends speak, but also other folk who I don't know. So it's been a very positive experience. I think there's a lot of energy in the room. There's a lot of discussion. I would like to point out that when these attacks occur, and it doesn't matter what country it is, there is a reaction, and a positive reaction. I think about Hungary and the masses of folks who have fought against this whole abortion thing in Hungary. And also what's happening in Brazil with Bolsonaro. He's been basically condemned for basically causing the crisis around COVID. And there's a lot of anger and a lot of emotion. And hopefully we'll see a lot of people who voted and supported him I mean, I think his support is I think it's going down right now. And then, of course, within this country, there's all kinds of things happening. And, you know, I'm not going to repeat all of it, but a lot of action, you know, all over the country on a number of issues. So I think it's important to not, I mean, we need to participate. We need to involve ourselves and others in all kinds of new ways and old ways. I've recently had a number of really positive experiences. There's a cafe in the local neighborhood, and I've gotten to know a number of the people that work there, waiters and bussers and others. And to the last man and woman, they're all mostly in their 20s. I'm an old guy. And I sit there and I read and I talk with people, and, you know, there's a lot of interest about what's going on, and people, you know, they're busy, they're involved with different projects, but, you know, I'm okay, I'm going to stop, but I thank you. This is wonderful. I'll continue to be involved with this. And I appreciate Lou and others who invited me to participate in these discussions. And what a great event, very positive. So thank you.
And thank you very much. We're going to call on one speaker to kind of wrap us up, and then we're going to introduce our poet. And I'm excited about that. So Jerome, I know you got some nuggets of wisdom for us.
Yes, I just had a couple of things that I want to emphasize. One is that, you know, we talk a lot about these extreme right-wing groups, and they're certainly dangerous. Many times that what we don't connect up to that is that there is a large section of the ruling class that is dictating to these groups of right-wing fascists. Fascism is the work of part of the ruling class. You know, this is a class society, and the ruling class is determining politically how they think they can save capitalism. You know, fascism don't come out of nowhere. The only reason that the ruling class moves toward fascism is because they understand that they can no longer rule in the same old way. And their job is to protect the system of capitalism, and they're willing to do anything to do that. And that's why they're moving toward fascism. You know, and so I think it's really, really important. And the last thing I wanted to say is, you know, all these things that are going on today, like the whole thing about the last election being a fraud, the whole thing about the school and education situation, these things are being used to try to expand and consolidate the social base for fascism. Mm-hmm. You know, of course they're trying to say that the vote is not right, but really they're trying to see who's on their side, who is willing to put aside truth and unite with them no matter what they say. And that's what this whole motion is about. And I think we got to be clear on that. Thank you. And this is a wonderful session. I really appreciate the team that put this together. Thank y'all.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. So for no further ado, so let me introduce our poet for today. His name is Mr. Stephen Payan. Excuse me if I mess up any names. I apologize. He is one of 6 members of the hip hop collective Mentes Diferentes. He has been a local community organizer in the greater Sacramento area for over 15 years. Mentes Diferentes is a group of street poets, producers, community organizers, and artists that never shy away from addressing social issues of the Brown experience through hip hop culture. He joined the League, that's Lerna, in Sacramento. The song, The Struggle Continues, that he will be presenting was written during the beginning of the Occupy movement to reach out and inspire youth and community to participate in the movement and find their role fighting against the 1%. And then we will put a link to his video in the chat as well.
Hey y'all, thanks.
So was I supposed to introduce the video? Oh, is the video playing right now? I can't see anything.
Yeah, go
Not
ahead,
yet.
Steve. It's hard to hear you. I can put the video on. Do you want to say a few words about it?
So, yeah, I'm one part of Mentes Diferentes, and we did this during the Occupy movement. If you look at a lot of the clips, a lot of it is doing direct action at the state capitol in Sacramento, Cesar Chavez March, the shutdown of Monsanto, a lot of civil disobedience, because at that time, we're like at the fierce urgency of now. So we're like trying to say, like, if the system's messed up, just stop it and get the people together and do general assemblies. And how can we get together as a whole movement, as of people just like Occupy Wall Street, like from Sacramento, and then just kind of inspire others to try to get up there too. Because at the time, it was snowballing in Sacramento, and then we just started getting more and more people. More and more people were occupying homes, from like here to the Bay Area to the to LA, and then just trying to hit the system in every different way possible, whether it be in the streets, whether it be in the Capitol, at the ballot. So yeah, that's what we were about. And then, so without further ado, if you want to play the song, thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Was I supposed to be reciting the poem, or was it a video?
I think it's a video. Aaron is just
Pulling it up.
Okay, thank you so much.
Can y'all see this?
Yes.
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 All the time they wanna take your place, the backstabbers.
It's been a long time, I stayed on the grind. Mind on the movement and the movement on my mind. Whether rain or shine, every verse and every line. Whether in the welfare line, for my people gotta grind. A lot of days and lonely nights, I stayed up to strategize. Little sacrifice, so my people organize. Gotta know your rights, have a wisdom, have a sight. They try to keep us blind and control by what we fight. It's a struggle to be free, but if not hustle, what will we? When will people see we control our destiny? Yo, we lack the unity within community. But if we band together, think the possibilities. Yo, I'm talking amnesty and to all those having dreams. Tearing down the borders, question inequality. Cause in reality, we control the salary. Power to the people, we now making history. Educate your brain, we mobilize for change. Mentes Diferentes, hence it still remains. When it rains and pours, they got money for war, but can't feed the poor.
Yo, we united, making noise to make a point. Motivated by the people to move forward and keep going. Some people fighting over colors, but I'm fighting for the power. Bodies of the Rasa dropping and increasing every hour. Sad reality is that the madness is everlasting. Why can't we understand we have control over what happens? Destiny reflects on your actions. And by killing off our people, how we keep the other man laughing. Taking a stand with my fate in my own hands. In the lab, organizing thoughts to the master plan. Cause I'm a max, I can't change in the game I am. I conquer pages like they invaded the land. So I'm working day and night trying to create the voice of my people in the struggle, thinking they don't got a choice. But your options are to succeed or to fail. And open mind of positivity is a way to prevail.
Educate your brain, we mobilize for change. Mentes Diferentes, hence it still remains. When it rains and pours, they got money for war, but can't feed the poor. Taking power back to a grassroots level. Going underground, shoot up and get your shovel. No, we can't settle, compromising with the devil. Politicians tricking, forcing us to go rebel. Part of the problem or part of the solution. No matter what you do, each action's contribution. Lead by example, but you follow an illusion. People want revolution, but ain't no part of evolution. This for all the gente organizing down the field. This for all the families who was working in the fields. This for all the blood of the ancestors that was spilled. This for a creator, bless me alive, and that's for real. This for all the braves organizing in the streets. All the med chistas graduating down the lead. This for like unionizing labor heat. This for all y'all mobilizing for the dream.
Thank you for that. Okay, over 520 years, the people in the culture still remain right? That was great. So did we want to close out or?
Yes, we're going to. So we actually extended our time, but you know, that was it. It was a good extra 15 minutes, I think.
Okay, yeah.
So I just want to thank everybody again for joining us for this conversation. The eval questions will be coming out to you in an email that you registered with us. And we encourage you to comment and, you know, say, hey, I got ideas of how to make it better. Come on. So we definitely encourage you to do that. We encourage you to go to our website. We do have other events scheduled. So there is one on, let's see, I wrote it down this morning, or I thought I did. October 30th, November 22nd. And you can get details of those events on the lrna.org website. And the second part of this conversation, actually, that will be the third on this fascism discussion and where do we go from here, is scheduled for early February 2022. So we look forward to seeing everybody and anybody else that you reach out, you touch, you organize with, you just have discussions, trying to figure out what's going on, invite them.
Hello, this is Tony Ryan again.
Yes.
Very quickly, I'm sorry. One sec. So, oh Christ.
Just a little water, that might clear it up.
Yeah, a little water.
Or comrade, you can type it in the chat if it's an announcement too.
No, wait, it's not. I'm sorry. Oh God.
Ooh, help him.
Okay, here it is.
See, call on him.
Quickly, quickly, I wanted to ask if the chat could be sent to everybody. I have a problem when I'm on webinars, looking at the chat a lot, and it's very valuable, but it dies when the discussion is ended. And the other thing I wanted to ask is if this whole program today will be available, presumably on the Learner site, as a video, so people like me who joined late could see the whole thing. So those are my questions. And again, I thank you all. What a great event today.
Thank you very
so
much.
Oh yeah, Kim, we're right here, Kim.
I know we're in sync. We're in sync. But to answer his questions, we have saved the chat. We can certainly, I don't know how to do it. We'll confer with the tech team to get that on the website, as well as a recording of this session.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, so I just want to say thank you for everyone who came and engaged in the discussion, those who listened in. This is something that we want to continue to have. And, in the spirit of Freire, because we've been talking about him a little bit tonight, I just remind you that it is only when the oppressed find the oppressors out and become involved in the organized struggle for their liberation that they begin to believe in themselves. This discovery cannot be purely intellectual, but must involve action, nor can it be limited to mere activism, but must include serious reflection. Only then will it be a praxis. So hopefully, in the spirit of activism, we continue to engage with one another to build a long-lasting, transformative movement to end death and destruction.
Well said. Thank you, everyone, for participating today. We look forward to seeing you all soon again. Be sure to check out the website. Be sure to visit Rally Comrades Have a wonderful continuation of your weekend.
Madam Chair, props to the moderators. Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank
Great job.
We're gonna have a party now.
Yeah.
Thank y'all. Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
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 Party.